go. Awesome.
Yay. All right. So thank you for making the time to join me, Marta. Just to give everyone who's watching, just a brief overview of what we're doing. So I met Marta in LA last week at the Purium Summit, and I was actually by um, struck by the fact that, for one, she seemed like a really vibrant human being, and I find out that she has Crohn's. And lately, a lot of my friends have been mentioning that they have Crohn's. And when I first started hearing about that, I'm like, Crohn's? What's that? Doesn't sound fun, but um, but yeah, Marta, can you tell us a little bit about well, first, what is Crohn's disease? And yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we're getting Shannon. There's still an echo. Thank you for telling us, Shannon. We'll see if we can get that taken care of. Well, over here too. Shannon, is that better? Hopefully. Okay. Yeah, so it was so nice to meet you, and thank you for being interested in it too. And I know you work with some people that have Crohn's disease, and so I hope that this can help them too and give them some information. I My journey with Crohn's disease has been probably about 20 years now. I just turned
Oh,
31.
wow.
Yeah, I just turned 31 last week when we met in LA, actually. And I started to have symptoms of Crohn's when I was probably about 8, right around the beginning of puberty. My Crohn's was really different. It started actually as tumors in my bones. So I started getting this crazy bone pain, like, when you have the flu and you get that, like, kind of achy, everything hurts, just exhausted bone
Hmm.
breaking feeling. So it started like that and then got worse and worse in my femurs. And then my parents took me to the doctor. They said, oh, it's growing pains, it's this, it's that. And so then about 6 months later, it was pretty unbearable for me. And then they did some x-rays of my bones and said, you have osteosarcoma, you have bone tumors, cancerous bone tumors, because that's what it showed up as on the x-rays and the MRIs. And thankfully, that's not what it was. We found out it wasn't about a month later. But for the 4 years, about 8 probably ish years, I didn't have a diagnosis. Um, then from the bones, it started to get GI symptoms, and then your standard Crohn's gastrointestinal. And then, so it's just a very interesting start to it versus having the GI problems start first.
And as a kid, what were you thinking?
As a kid, it it definitely hit my parents more than it hit me. Um, Kind of the reality and the gravity. Having this diagnosis of cancer was like, my first thought is, well, is my hair going to fall out? Is, all of these external things, but not really thinking of the bigger picture of like, this is a huge deal. You could die. So it was more keeping it um, less like always downplaying it in my head. And so I tried to never let the fear get in the way of just living day by day, because it was more just dealing with the pain of it. And I was always tended to be like, didn't want to show what was going on because I knew how hard it was for my parents and my community. And so it was very private about it, and tucked a lot of things inside, which is also a very typical Crohn's thing to do. um, so it was hard. But I feel, being a kid, it was harder to conceptualize. But when I turned, 18 through 21, those were the hard years of it. definitely the hardest.
Was there any guilt or shame that you sort of had to sort of reckon with from having this condition?
You know, that is such a profound question. Shame. The shame was huge for me and very affected me so much, affected my friendships, affected the way I did everything. It took a huge toll on my self-worth. Um, Being young and having this really undiagnosed autoimmune disease until I was around 18 was so hard because it was, doctors were like, well, basically, you're going to probably get worse until you die. So here's all these pain pills. We don't know what's going on with you. And so I felt very alone, very isolated, and I was very closed off because it was it was like such a burden when I talked about it with people on them. And that could be real or it could just have been my reality at the time. But it was like so painful for the other person to hear that it made me feel, yeah, like guilty or uncomfortable or like apologetic. Like, sorry for making you so
Mm.
uncomfortable about what's going on with me. Yeah, it is really hard. But so that really, I think, started to push me to be in my shell a lot about it and not talk about it. And I had started to walk with a pretty severe limp, so I dragged my right leg because the tumors were bigger in my right femur.
Oh, oh, wow. It was affecting the way you walked.
Yeah, absolutely. So I limped really severely. Um, and if you look at it on an X-ray, my femur got to be probably about this big around, at the biggest spot of the tumor. So none of my femurs had normal bone in them. So it was super painful, and I would be like, "Oh yeah, sprained ankle," like because the the truth for a lot of people was really hard to hear. And so that's an interesting thing for me now too, when people tell me what's going on with them, to remember what it felt like a long time ago when I had a weird diagnosis or a very difficult diagnosis, um, to respond in a way that I would want to be responded to at that point.
So, when did things start to shift for you? Because looking at you right now, like I would never know that you were suffering with any kind of lifelong condition. I'm sure a lot of people get that impression when they see you. You're also in a really happy relationship as well. Like, obvious. So your Instagram handle, for those of you who don't know, is thriving with Crohn's. So when did that shift first start to happen, and what else sort of accompanied that shift for you?
Thank you. I am happy, and it's been a lot of steps to get here. Um, and it was really just a choice from the beginning. It's mental, physical, and emotional. Absolutely, all those three parts go into it. But mental, it had to be a choice because I think in a lot of ways I was like lucky to hear, well, you're probably not going to get any better. We don't know what it is. So at that moment, it was like my critical moment. Well, I have to make a choice. Either I'm going to be miserable every single day because I know that my life is going to get like worse and worse and worse and more painful, or I have the power that I get to choose. Okay, well, if tomorrow is going to be worse, then literally today is the best, most pain free day of the rest of your life. So it's time to enjoy it.
Mm.
And so that got me through a lot of days when I was kind of like getting into the funk of, this is so painful, this is so awful. No, like, you've got this, girl. Like, today is the best day. So, finding little tricks, little ways to think about it differently. Um, but so I do a lot of things for my health. And I guess that would be like the follow up to that of how I got to be from really sick and 40 pounds skinnier and in so much pain to like living a very normal, happy life. Um, I started to do a lot with nutrition. So that was huge. And starting to cut out different food groups to see what helped.
Like what?
So I started legumes were the first one, and that was the biggie that I could tell. So I don't have any soy, no beans of any kind, no garbanzo beans, no hummus, um, peanuts, no peanuts, or very very minimal peanuts. Um, so that was the first thing that I was able to tell immediately. Like if I had like a bite of tofu, I'd be like internal bleeding right away. Um, but then everything else was a little bit more difficult to tell because I was so sick. And then eventually I got the diagnosis of actually having Crohn's disease, and Crohn's affecting not only my GI tract, but my bones as well. And this was really, really rare and hard to get a diagnosis of, but I met my mom, actually when chat rooms were still a thing, my mom met this amazing doctor in Iowa, and we live out in Oregon. Started chatting. Well, actually, it was another mom. It was like this chat room for moms with weird kids with weird diseases. So our moms connected and told her about this woman, doctor, rheumatologist, actually out in University of Iowa, Dr. Polly Ferguson. I flew out there about a week later. She talked to me for like an hour on the phone. She was just amazing. And she was like, I know this is really weird, but I believe that you have Crohn's in your bones. I can't officially diagnose you because I'm not a gastroenterologist. We're going to find you some really good doctors and get you some help. And that was right about 21. And so then I was able to get on a biologic after about 6 months of petitioning to get it. And so I take Humira, and that was huge. That was like the first layer that kind of came off. So first layer of inflammation, the tumors in my bones started to shrink. And it was amazing. I started to get a life back. I was to the point of being bedridden if I wasn't taking Vicodin and huge anti-inflammatories. I was kind of on that like pain pill cocktail combo because there really wasn't anything else that was working, that. And so it was just this incredible like day. My sister took me to get my first shots, and then like within hours I started to be able to walk again. And so in the next 6 months or so, my tumor started to shrink. So Humira was the first layer, which I'm so grateful for, but it did not solve everything by any means. So that really started to shrink my bones, but then I had to focus so much on my GI. So then I was able to figure out what are these other foods that are making my Crohn's worse. So now it's no legumes from before, no gluten, no dairy, very, very minimal meat. And I was meat free for quite a while, but I was eating more grains when I started to do that. So more like rice, seeds, quinoa. And I realized that for my body, eating a little bit of high quality meat and a ton of vegetables seems to be what makes me feel the best. And high quality meat would mean like no antibiotics, no hormones, and just dance party. We needed like a little mood lightener.
Where is that coming from?
I thought it was you. Is it me?
I think it was you, yeah.
That's really funny. I've never heard that before. Well, that's weird. Why is that happening?
I think that's coming on your end.
Elon Musk video just started on my computer randomly.
Okay.
Anyway, back to the story. So yeah, no chicken. So if I eat meat, it's a little bit of organic beef.
Really? So
No chicken.
So red meat's okay, but chicken isn't.
Yeah, and that's going to be something that like as a Crohn's person has to be able to figure out on your own with some trial and error. But for me, chicken is super, super inflammatory. And I notice like other symptoms too. So I'll get yeast infections, I'll get really congested, my skin will break out. So just sort of those typical inflammatory reactions.
What's your favorite food?
My favorite food. The food that makes me feel the best right now is literally a green drink from Purium. This is
Yeah.
like the funniest thing. But I love it. And no matter how sick I am, like this always tastes good to me. This is like my favorite like soul food. My favorite like just like food is tacos. Tacos and pizza. Yeah. Street
So,
corn in Mexico. Salty fatty. I'm much more of like a salty fatty, not like a sweet sugary person.
so no beans, no cheese, maybe a little bit of meat, salsa, lettuce. What's your dream taco?
Organic vegetables. My dream taco. Oh, this would be amazing if there could be a plant-based carnitas taco with pineapple,
Mm.
fresh radishes shaved onto it from the garden, some sprouted nut-based sour cream. That would be my ideal. So if somebody wants to create that for me and figure it out, I would love you to the ends of the time.
Yeah, make that too. Make that too.
Yes,
I'll take
please.
one. All
So
right.
anybody that's listening, yeah, please experiment with diet because it helped me so much. So tons of organic vegetables. When I'm in a flare up, steamed is going to be the best, just so it's softer and more gentle. Nuts, but sprouted nuts because they have some anti-nutrients in them that are really hard to digest. So if I eat nuts,
Phytic acid in particular.
pardon?
Phytic acid in particular.
Yes, Vali. Look at you.
Yeah, I also make sure I go the sprouted route with nuts and seeds.
Awesome. Yeah, it's super helpful. So that
Um, I want to redirect the conversation back to that shake that you were just waving at everyone. So for those of you who are watching, how I know Marta is at the Purium convention, and Purium is a non-GMO, organic superfood movement disguised as a company, and a lot of us that are in it are kind of obsessed with it because of the way it makes us feel, what it has done for our bodies. And how did that land on your lap? And how did that also impact your journey with Crohn's?
Yeah, this has been amazing. So this was sort of like the last step in diet that I really was missing, and something my body felt like, oh, like I'm finally nourished. It was like everything that it needed and it was wanting and looking for. So I started with just taking their biomedic, which is this incredible supplement that pulls glyphosate out of your body. And people with autoimmune disease have the highest rates of glyphosate.
What is glyphosate?
So glyphosate is the main chemical in Roundup. So if you've seen on the news, anybody that's watching, I'm sure, like Roundup causes cancer, these lawsuits in California and now in Nebraska. So check it out. But it's very interesting that the highest rates of people with glyphosate poisoning have autoimmune disease.
And it's not just like autoimmune disease. There are so many health conditions that are only now being discovered to be traced to Monsanto's Roundup. And it's used everywhere. Like sometimes I'll talk to people about it and then they'll like chuckle, being like, yeah, I kind of use it in my garden. And kind of like it's just become so commonplace that it is everywhere. It's in our food, it's in our lawn, we get it on ourselves when we pet our dogs.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. It's so prevalent. And not only autoimmune disease and especially Crohn's and colitis, IBD, but it's linked now to autism, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple different types of cancer, especially estrogen based cancers, so like breast cancers or endometrial cancer. Um, Gout is another interesting one that people don't think of. So it's a long list, and I feel like most people I know, or at least like one person removed, everybody has something on that list.
Hmm.
And what they're finding too is that there's so many more gluten sensitivities, but it might not necessarily be a gluten sensitivity. It could actually be a glyphosate or a Roundup sensitivity because they spray so much of it on wheat crops.
I have friends who have gluten intolerance here in the US. They go to Europe and then they're like, oh, I have to try the cuisine there, even though I might break out. And then they'll eat gluten in Europe and nothing will happen. They'll just sort of walk away from that being like, oh, huh. And it just goes to show that the wheat that we're consuming here in the US is so radically different than what they're eating in Europe. You don't have the same gluten insensitivities in Europe that you do here. And that's very telling.
It is very telling. There's a great podcast I can put the link to from, I believe it's Dr. Hyman, and I can put it in the links below this too. It's only like 10 minutes long, and it explains too about glyphosate in our wheat now.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So yeah, back to biomedic. The biomedic was incredible. I noticed, like, no matter how thin I was, I always had like a huge belly, even when I had like super skinny and in the worst flare ups because I had so much pain and bloating and inflammation. And so when I started to take biomedic, it was the first time ever that I had a flat stomach. I was like, what? What is this? Like, so much less pain. Like, my husband, I could never have him sleep with his arm across my belly because it would always be like super painful, any little bit of light pressure. Um, and now I can snuggle efficiently at night, but so much less pain. So the biomedic was another like layer taken off. And then I started to do their core 4 nutrition or their 40-day ultimate nutrition. So similar products, you just get more in the 40-day plus a cleanser that cleans out extra toxins and any parasites or things that are holding on inside your GI. But the core 4 is this green drink, which is an amazing organic gluten-free green drink. Has like 12 servings of veggies in it, and it really alkalines your body. And what I found is the more veggies that I can get in for my Crohn's, the better. But a lot of times it's so hard to, for a lot of people who have Crohn's or in a flare up. And so having something that's already in a smoothie form that's broken down, your body doesn't have to do any work and you can just chug it and feel super good and get all of the nutrients from the vegetables. Like, that is going to be a huge help.
Yeah, I feel an instant pick me up every time I have a shake, and obviously, like I also did like a 10-day reset using the 40-day transformation, using the core 4, and I thought I was healthy before that. Like I've been blessed to, with not really having growing up with any health conditions, largely because half of my life was spent outside of the U.S., so I wasn't really eating in the way that most people were. That being said, I still did have glyphosate toxicity from the time that I did live in the US. And after taking biomedic, I noticed mental fog started to disappear, my energy went up, um, and I didn't think I could get healthier. And now I'm hearing that people are using it to support themselves through very difficult health conditions, such as yourself with Crohn's. I met another lady who supported herself through Lyme with it. And there's no, as far as I know, there isn't really a cure to any of these conditions. This is something that you'll have to reckon with for the entirety of perhaps your life. I don't know. Maybe a cure does get discovered pretty soon. Um, that being said, um, it's really cool to hear that you're not letting this prevent you from living your best life and from being inspiring to others. So thank you for saying yes to life.
Thank you. It's so exciting now to be able to be in this place in my life and get to share with people. And that was my goal. I started Thriving with Crohn's. I have a YouTube channel and an Instagram, and I put my first video up and it got like 100,000 views, and
Wow.
I was totally blown away. And at that point I was like, didn't know really what a big deal that was and what it meant. And um my husband's like, you have to get this information out here, like people need this. And for me now, I'm like, why did I suffer so much if I can't help other people, if I can't share what I learned and hopefully help someone else get out of a flare up or get into remission, or at least have a day that's a little more pain free, or maybe not get their organs removed and their colon resection. Like, I want people to know that there is hope, that they can do things with their diet. They can add some more greens in, they can do yoga, they can have some meditation, they can do other ceremonial work. There's incredible pharmaceuticals. Like, there is hope, and it will get better. And so if someone else can learn that from our conversation today, feel a little more inspired that it's not all doom and gloom and the end of times, then our time was worth it.
No, that's a really beautiful way to look at it, really. And really, anytime that we experience any form of suffering, there's always a choice, as you mentioned earlier. You could let it make you miserable, or you could process it. You can ask questions, try to understand why. Like, why you, of all people, have to go through this. And yeah, it's up to us to make of it what we will. Always.
Thank you. Well, I want to make sure too that everybody has a solid list of good nutrition that they can come away with. And so, make sure you take a really good B12, methylated B12, and I can put a link below of what I like. I just get it on Amazon. It's pretty inexpensive. It's the best one that I've found for myself. A vitamin D, because people with Crohn's have a really hard time absorbing vitamin D. Then I take the Core 4 nutrition from Purium every day now, and that is the green drink, the Biomedic, tart cherry juice at night that helps with inflammation and helps you sleep, and then an already broken down amino acid. So it actually goes straight to your muscles in 23 minutes, and you don't need to digest it, which is so nice, because for any of us that have trouble digesting or aren't absorbing the nutrients in your food, then it's amazing to just have something to support your muscles and your skin that goes right there. And the Biomedic also helps with digestion too, and being able to actually absorb the nutrients from your food and also from the other supplements that you're taking. And then what else do I do? The Purium products, Aloe Digest. That's another wonderful one from Purium, and I put that in my green drink too. So aloe is super nice and soothing, but you gotta make
it's a nice gentle flavor.
Yeah.
One last question.
Yes, please go ahead.
What do you dream about now these days?
I dream about my personal dreams are family, like supporting my family, myself, traveling, getting to have kids with my husband someday and support them to make their lives the best that they can, so that they can shine out from that and make the world a little brighter with whoever that they touch. Maybe they'll be my biological children, maybe they'll be adopted in some form.
Nice to be flexible with what that looks like.
Nice to be flexible. And dreaming that we have the power to make our lives different every day. And it doesn't need to be a big deal. You can wake up and change the energy for your own life and say, okay, hey, today is going to be an amazing day, and things will start to shift in that direction. And so I dream about that for myself, and so that hopefully my ripples can go out and affect my family and my community and ping, ping, ping out the to the rest of the world. And I know that each of us have the power to do that, and we can live in the world that we want to live in by our actions and our emotions every day. So that's my dream that I visualize. And so it is.
Mic drop. Marta, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with the world. And a lot of people are struggling. So I'm sure, like, I'm almost certain that this video at some point is going to reach the right people, and maybe they'll be inspired to sort of take things into their own hands. So thank you for shining your own light and yeah, and just being fun while doing it.
Aw, well, thank you, my friend. It was such a pleasure. It was so nice to talk with you, and you asked such beautiful questions and really opened me up to share. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Thriving with Crohn's on all three. So I really look forward to being in touch and connecting. Please shout out with any questions, and we can always do this again sometime too.
Yeah, I'm totally game. Like I love these. I love doing these.
Me too.
So
Happy to
yeah,
do a follow-up.
let's definitely stay in touch about that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We are out.